You're listening to the Sales Today podcast, and I'm your host, Fred Copestake. On this podcast, we explore how sales professionals can develop a more modern approach to selling, the application of virtual and hybrid selling techniques, how to create meaningful business relationships, and much more. And welcome to this episode of the Sales Today podcast, where I'm delighted to be joined by Bob Moesta, who is author of Demand Side Sales. Bob, welcome.
Hey, Fred. Thanks for having me on. Excited to be here.
No, I'm very excited to talk to you. We were on a panel once together.
With the amazing Marcus.
I call him with Marcus Kaki, we better just tip our hats to him. He seems to get a mention on all my podcasts. Ubiquitous, Marcus. But no, you started talking about demand side sales then. And I kind of knew that, right, I want to talk to you on my podcast about that and kind of really pull it out in perhaps more simplified terms, if we can, for this audience. So that's the first question then. Demand side sales, what is it?
So let me give you a little bit of my background, because I think it'll be relevant to kind of your audience, which is, first of all, I'm not a traditional salesperson, though I've run sales organizations and I've built 7 startups. But I'm more of an innovator and a builder. So I've built over 3,500 different innovations. I've worked on things like the Patriot missile guidance system and Pokemon mac and cheese and Basecamp software and just about everything in between. And so for me, one of the things is that as I move, I'm in my late 50s, moving into my 60s, and as I start to think about what I want to do, I feel like I have to pass on what people have taught me. And so I have 4 really big mentors that have influenced my life. One is the gentleman, Dr. Deming. Dr. Deming was the quality guru in the 50s who went to Japan and helped reinvent Japan. Clay Christensen and Dr. Taguchi and others, but they taught me. Basically, I'm dyslexic and I can't read and I can't write. And I was told to be a baggage handler. And those people taught me how to create things and how to sell things and how to do things differently. And one of the beautiful things that I had is I had the opportunity to have 4 hours a quarter with Clayton Christensen, who's a Harvard Business School professor, with no agenda. And one day I asked him a question. I said, why are there no sales professors? I said, I've done these startups, I've done all these things, but I don't understand how I can go get my MBA and not actually have one sales class. And he's like, that's a really good question, because sales is the hardest part of any business I've ever run. Sales is the hardest part. And it turns out that most people in academia think sales is a trade. And they don't understand that truly sales is the center of almost every single company. It has to be the center. They are like really good salespeople are at the core of it, because they have to know everything. They have to know about the product. They have to know about the customer. They have to know about supply. They have to know about pricing. They have to actually know it all. And so part of it is to realize, like, why is it that way? And part of me came to is as you start to research that problem, it becomes that sales is really psychology, and sales is about the product, and sales is about so there's no general things that you would really teach somebody in an MBA. The only way you can learn sales is in the field. And one of the frameworks that I had built over the years is something called jobs to be done, and that people really don't buy products, they hire them to make progress in their life. And I learned to sell with that premise, which is I'm not trying to push my product into your life. I'm trying to understand, when are you ready to pull my product into your life? And so it's this notion of being customer centric. And what's so fascinating about when you start to peel this onion back is that most people say they're customer centric, but they're actually customer centric through their product. So they look at the customer through their product, as opposed to look at their customer's life and say, how do we fit in it? And that's really the premise of the book, which is, how do we actually see the progress people are trying to make and understand the causal mechanisms of what causes people to buy? And if we understand the buying process that they go through, because it's not the ideal buying process, but what do they have to learn? What do they have to know? What do they have to trade off to get there? And then ultimately, how do I align my sales system to that? And so most people start with, how do I sell? And I start with, how do you buy? How do people buy?
How do you sell this? How do you buy? So, well, there's a few concepts in here. I was scribbling away.
I'm sorry. As people would say, I speak with a fire hose. Like, I apologize, but that's how I work. That's how I roll.
No, absolutely no. This is what we want. This is what we want. So, I think the first thing we just need to understand a little bit better is the jobs to be done thing. Yeah. That's really important. It is something I've come across before, but can you just explain that in a little bit?
Yeah,
a little bit more detail.
So let's play the screen a little bit here. If I do this one, no, this one, and I go here. So this is the basic premise: is that people don't buy products; they hire them to do a job and make progress. Yeah. And this actually is that a job is about the progress they're trying to make. And so, first of all, we are creatures of habit, and we will keep doing the same thing we've been doing over and over again until we struggle. And it doesn't have to be a problem, but struggle implies that you care. It's hard to struggle with something you don't care about.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. and so part of that is the pain part of the process. But the other aspect here is that I can struggle, and this is where I always say people will bitch about something, but they don't do anything. Well, they're not trying to make progress. They're just complaining. And part of that problem is they have to actually understand what it's like on the other side. They have to see what the outcome that they're hoping for on the other side.
Right.
And so part of this is that when I build product, right, my thing is I try to actually figure out how to surround the person to understand what's going on in their life. What are they struggling with? And what are the outcomes they want? So then I can figure out, to get across this river, I can come up with 1,000 ways to do that. I can build a bridge. I can build a tunnel. I can get a dock. I can get a boat. I can teach them there's just thousands and thousands of technologies I can put to help people make that progress. But their context of what they're struggling with, I've got a pack of wolves after me, I've got a bear after me, versus, the grass is greener over there. All that motivation is all wrapped up in them. Demand is their desire to make progress. And that the other part of it is we keep thinking that products create demand. And what I'll tell you is that demand is actually independent of product, that I can actually have demand that exists and people don't even know how to find me, but the struggling moment is there and the outcome is there. They don't know how to find me. And so part of it is starting from that premise and then letting everything expand from there.
Got you. Right. Yeah. So it's outcomes, right? People trying to achieve stuff, so many different ways to do it.
That's excellent. Right. The second part of it, though, is that the way we look at it is that it's about causation, right? So the second part of this whole thing is that people don't randomly buy anything. They might not plan to buy it and they'll say random, but it's not random. There are causes. There are underlying sets of causes. There are pushes of the current situation. There's pulls from a new solution or outcomes they want. There's anxiety and habits that they have to overcome. And so as you start to actually understand how people make progress and the forces that are applied to it, you then know how to actually help them make that progress, right? And so part of this is being able to understand kind of the language they use, because lots of times we talk about our product, but we talk about it in our language, not theirs, right?
Yep. I've been guilty of that. I've been totally guilty of that.
But I think we all are. I think we all are.
Yeah.
And I think the fact is what I learned, what I say, I was lucky enough very early in my career to fail a lot. And what I mean by that is I built product that I thought was the best, and then people didn't buy it. And then I literally talked to people and I built what they told me they wanted, and they go, oh, that's not really what I wanted. Or I built something that was really good for the user, but the buyer couldn't buy it. Or I built something for the buyer, but then the user didn't like it. And so you start to realize, like, I have to understand the dynamic of their world first because what I realized is as an engineer, they taught me I could build anything I ever wanted. And it's probably true, but just because I want it doesn't mean they want it.
Yeah, that's what we were saying before we started recording, didn't we? You get intellectually curious about something and you kind of go down that rabbit hole, solving things and solving it again, and the better mousetrap, and it's like, well,
and
that's my score, if you know.
That's the thing. And well, this is how you end up having products that with feature creep. Oh, we added this feature. Oh, we added that feature. But you don't realize when you add too many features, you create anxiety for your customer because they think it's too complicated. So you're trying to say, oh, I'm going to try to appeal to everybody. And when you appeal to everybody, you actually appeal to nobody.
Yeah.
It's a paradox. And so part of it is to realize there are patterns in how people buy, and that people buy for different reasons. And if you can actually understand the distinct different reasons, it actually, you only have to give them the 5 things they need to make progress, not the 200 things that you can offer them.
Yeah, and I suppose sometimes if you're setting out, yeah, this is where you could be, and it's so far in the future, that's overwhelming. It's frightening.
Right.
And all I
Yeah,
wanted to
yeah, yeah.
do was get to here, like you said, cross
So,
the river, and go down the road and get to the Emerald City
well,
and do this. And I thought, oh.
yeah. So
Yeah,
one of the things I talk about, right, is that as they're seeing this problem or this struggle that they have and the outcomes they have, where's their time horizon? How far are they able to see out? So, for example, I'm doing some work around cooking dinner, right?
yeah,
And you have to realize that most people can't think about dinner a month out for sure. They barely can think about dinner for the week. And so, where are people's time horizon? And ultimately, when you start to speak beyond their time horizon or too shallow in their time horizon, they don't get it. So part of it is being able to understand and what I talk about, empathetic perspective. You've got to be able to sit in their shoes and feel what they feel and hear what they hear. And too many times we're trying to just talk to them as opposed to listen. And so one of the key aspects here is how we listen to people and how we gather what I call intent from the words. Because people can say the same thing, but they can say it completely differently.
yeah.
God, your product's really, it's good. Versus, God, your product's really good. I said the exact same words, but they have very different intents. Right. And what I would say is my next question is very different depending on how they said it, not just what they said.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
this is where
no,
really good salespeople understand how to listen. They understand how to mirror. They understand how to tease out. They understand how to help people, help them see the future as opposed to give them the future.
I'm guessing then this is the kind of the difference between active listening that we often hear people
Yes.
talk about and search listening. And I think a
Yes.
lots of salespeople spend most of the time search listening, as in, I'm waiting for you to say the
Where's
thing
the
that I want to
angle?
hear, and then I'm going to pounce. Yes, you said that. You
That's
said
right.
that.
That's right.
And there's
Just
a whole
say the
load of
one
other
word
stuff.
and then I'm there.
Yeah. Oh,
Right.
well, you said that. I said, well, I said loads of other
And
things actually, which are
and
more important.
so like the thing that I try to get when I coach salespeople, well, the thing I try to get them to realize is that they have to, before they can actually make a statement, they have to actually say, can you tell me more? Can you give me an example? Or can you tell me what that's not? It's allowing people to actually start to realize the language that they have to use to talk to people. And so too many times they'll say the one word and then they'll jump into their pre-planned program speech of what the feature is and what it does. And they're not even watching the reaction of the listener to see if there's any feedback. And they literally talk right by people. And so this is, I always call it the show up and throw up. And I'm like if you're showing up and throwing up, like, you just got to have reps. You just got to be able to have enough people through. In my belief, you can sell, but you're not sensitive to when people are ready and how people are ready and things like that.
Or websites.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
They're always on. So no, go back there. So you said, tell me more. Okay, good.
Yep.
Give me an example. But you also said,
Yep.
tell me what it's not.
Yeah.
That's an interesting
So
question.
we're worried, like people say, like, well, I want to be healthier. Well, what does that mean? And they
Yeah.
give you some pablum crap. And I'd say, all right, well, tell me what tell me what unhealthy is, or tell me what's not healthy. Oh, it's when I got a thing on my stomach. It's when I basically run out of breath. It's when like they can give me 1,000 reasons of what healthy's not. And so that's actually how they're defining healthy. Where if you just ask them about what healthy, they're going to say, I'm eating well, I'm exercising every day. It's just generic crap. And so part of it is to actually understand what are they really talking about. And 9 times out of 10, most people can't tell you what it is. They can tell you what it's not, right? My underlying premise is most people don't buy by choosing. They actually decide by eliminating. And so in the process, so the other part of this is what we call the timeline. And in deciding, people actually need reference points and they need perspective. And so if you give somebody one proposal, right, they then have to go find 2 other proposals to get contrast to know if it's right. And so what I usually do is I don't ever give one proposal. I give 3 really different ways to do it and 3 really different prices to force them to make choices. And what's interesting is the first thing that they do is when you give them 3 choices, they can eliminate one of them always. So there's one over here that's out, and you got 2 other choices. You have this one's out. And then what most logically you'd think people would compare these 2 to pick, but what they do is they compare these 2 to this one, and ultimately they say, well, this one's closer to that, so I'll pick this one. So they don't actually pick that one. They eliminate the 2 they don't want.
That's it. So you're kind of becoming your own competitor.
But here's the thing is, if you don't give them perspective, they will have to go get choice. They will have to go create alternatives because they only learn through perspective. And then the option is do it or don't do it versus how can we do it better? And the other problem is we try to get people to make big steps. Sometimes people just want a half step. And so if we don't give them the half step, they can't go like, oh, I can't do that. But the half step might actually lead to the whole step, but they might have to only buy the half step first. It's about them. It's not about us.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you preach, right? This is where we like the thing you taught. There was a phrase you used.
Was it think like a partner? Oh, yeah,
well,
busy,
like a partner,
yeah.
Right? But the busy part is that people think if I have more sales calls, I'm gonna win. My thing is I want people to be ready for me, and I want to be ready for them. They convince themselves. I can't convince them of anything. And so part of this is how do I actually understand somebody is ready for me to help? And what I would say is if I have a set of questions to say like, oh, Bob, I'm really interested in your stuff. It's like, that's great. Interest actually is a turnoff to me because if you're interested, it's telling me that you're really not serious.
There is a thing. I've got a colleague who says, if you ever hear someone from Britain say, oh, that's interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Take that with a pinch of salt. It probably means they couldn't think of anything less interesting ever.
So I worked for Ford right out of college, and I lived in Germany, but I worked in Dunton and then in Cologne. And the thing is, it was so interesting. I had this phrase where it says like, well, because both Germans and English, UK people would say interesting, but they had completely different meanings of it. Interesting in the UK kind of meant like, yeah, move on. Like, oh, that's interesting. Like, yeah. In German, it would be, that's interesting. Is like, what is that? How is that? And they'd literally go like down to it. Like, and so the same word, you'd have to actually react completely differently to.
Yeah.
So it's so phenomenal.
It could be worse. If you're ever in the UK, it all says nice.
Yeah. Oh, that's
usually
nice.
sarcastic.
Yeah, that's like, Well, I'll say the
nice.
kiss of death for me is when they say, "Oh, that's really cool." I'm like, "Oh God, that means they have no language to even tell me what that means." Like, what? And you try to ask them what cool means, and they give you all this, but it gives them like, I'd like to do that, but I don't know how it fits. Like, cool is like, oh, the worst. Like that's like, I do a lot of postmortems on sales to say like, what language do I want to be able to hear to say they're ready, and what language are the triggers that literally say like, nah, they're not ready. And so a lot of times when I hear cool, I'm like, yeah, that usually when people say cool, they don't know how to apply it. So I'm just assuming like this is something that you want to be informed about right now. And I'd say, so you're just passive looking, and they're like, yeah, we're just kind of looking. Perfect. I have to know where they are in space and time. Cool. And so the language they use helps me know that. And so most people try to get to the close as fast as possible, but they're going to close on their terms, not yours.
Yeah. So the language that we do want to hear when we're sort of hearing stuff and we're thinking, oh, okay, yeah, this is going well. What are the sort of the things that are going to be exciting us?
So the first thing is so all of these should be phrased as open-ended questions, and you're headed the right direction when you ask a question and you get a smile. Or you ask a question and you get a gasp, or you get a question and they go like this, and you go like, you want to actually figure out what's the emotional aspect of that question. So you're actually trying to almost pull their emotions out of them. And most people would say that, especially in B2B, that B2B sales are not emotional. They're very, very, tactical and functional. And I will tell you that when you do really good postmortems, you will realize that people don't pay the lowest price. They don't pick the cheapest vendor. They want trust. They want reliability. Those are all emotional things. And the question is, how do you cause trust? Right? And so this is one of those things where in a postmortem, I've literally asked somebody like, yeah, we were looking for a new telecom supplier, and we had been with the previous one for 20 years. And, and I brought 4 people in, and, we ended up picking one, and it went great. And I'm like, so, what was the process? It's like, well, on the second meeting, I trusted this person. I went, pause. Like, that was a word that was like, oh my God, okay, wait. How do you trust somebody that you just met and you don't trust somebody after 20 years? And you start to realize they're like, well, here's the thing is I trust because one, when they came in, they did, they didn't tell me about them. They asked me about me. They didn't name drop. They didn't tell me, they didn't tell me the offering. They literally just listened and learned about my business. There's 4 of them. 2 of them just came in and told us, here's who we work with. You want to work with us because we work with them. And here's what our features are. Which one do you want? They threw them out immediately. The other part, though, is that not only did they listen to them, they came back with options. And so all of a sudden, instead of bringing one thing, they brought 3 things. And they would say like, well, we could do this or we could do that. And they taught me how to buy because all of a sudden they thought about a lot of things I hadn't thought about. The third thing is that they were responsive, but not too responsive. I said, what does that mean? He said, well, look, that's exactly right. Like, I'm like, what do you mean they were responsive? Well, I'd send an email and they'd get back to me within a couple of hours or within the day. I said, well, what's the problem if they immediately do this? He says, well, if it's too fast, I get worried. What do you mean you get worried? He's like, if it's too fast, it's a robot or they're not busy. And that actually scares me that it's too fast. Right. And then the fourth thing was the thing that kind of blew my mind, which was, he says, in the end, he goes, the reason why I ended up going with this one company is because they told me no. I said, what? He says, everybody who tells me, yeah, oh yeah, we can do that. Oh yeah, we can do that. I'm like, yeah, they don't know what I mean. They don't. But the moment that they told me no, I knew they understood me, and I knew they had ethical boundaries, right? And so we took that debrief and we literally taught all the salespeople how to do that, how to cause trust. And what we told them is, you got to find one thing that is so absurd that have them ask for, so you can say no to it, so you can close. And it increased people's closing rate by almost 3x.
Oh, no, generally, right? How interesting. German
in a German way.
Listened and came back to them with options.
Yep.
Taught them how to buy, so step them through the process. This is for things which people probably aren't buying that often, if ever. It might be the only time they buy it. They
especially in B2B, it's like, when's the last time you bought a new CRM? Well, I never bought that. I know this one. So it's like, when's the last time you bought a bed? 10 years ago. Like, how do you buy a bed? Buying a bed is so complicated, and it's resorting to laying on a mattress somewhere for less than 30 seconds and going, I'll take that one. That's not how you buy a bed.
Yeah. Then we've got responsive, but not too responsive. That is crazy, but I get it. And then they told me no. Now that sounds like a different told me no than they acted like a challenger.
Yes.
Or is it part and parcel of the same? So, well, no, that's not right for you, or just no, can't do that. It's impossible.
No. So this is the challenger part is about actually understanding where the boundaries are of the scope of what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
The no that I'm talking about is the no that's like, well, we need to have free 12 months of service agreement thrown in for free. Like when they're starting to negotiate hard on something and you are able to say, well, no, I can't do that. Here's something else I could do instead. The fact is the ability to actually use the word no. It's not like, that's good, but I could do this. But the moment you actually use the word no is when the endorphins hit. It's like that you get the plunger goes into the system when they hear no, because that's like they have a system by which they know how to make these decisions or to help me make that decision. So it's different than challenger. Challenger no is about boundaries. Yeah. This is about respect.
Yeah, and I guess it is setting yourself out as a different sort of salesperson, because as you said, so many go, yeah, we can do that, yeah, we can do that, yeah, we can do it. It's just like, keep talking, I'm going to keep saying yes. No,
Right.
that's
That's
it
right.
doesn't
Well,
work
and
like
the thing
that.
is here's the crazy part is the more I get people to say no, actually, the better I'm doing in a sales meeting. No, it's not that. Oh, then if it's not, what is it? But if I say everything and say, yep, 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 and they just keep saying yes, I'm bombing.
Yeah.
This is the paradox. We're teaching salespeople, like, you need to just accept rejection and not good at no. Like the no is like, well, no, if that's not like, so I very early in my career, I learned criminal and intelligence interrogation methods. And what I learned is that I want to actually play back things incorrectly so they can make it better. So they'll tell me things and I'll play it, like I'll be with a colleague and I'll play it back incorrectly. And my colleague will go like, no, that's not what they said. I'm like, stop, shut up. I'm playing it back because they're going to go like, no, that's not it. Well, then what? Tell me more. What I get wrong? And then they'll fix it.
Yeah.
So this is about helping them discover what they want, not just giving them what you think they want. Most people don't know what they want.
Because we will have an idea because we've seen similar circumstances before. And so, yeah, we're going to be in the right ballpark. And that's why we're having the conversation. But to get it properly nailed down, this is where it's got to be different every single time. Same but different almost. Right. Yeah.
But here's the thing is what I'll say is there's patterns, but most of the time we just see patterns in who. Well, this is what a director says, or this is what this industry says, and this industry is different than that industry. And we think about who, but it's not just who, it's who, when, where, and why. That defines a market to me. Just because a total addressable market is 1 million people, there's only so many people struggling in that market right now looking for something new. Not everybody needs this. Need is a condition. It's not a state.
Yeah. So
sorry, I'm introducing a lot of language, but like this is where people usually have to listen to this twice or 3 times to let it absorb, because like you heard the first part, then you're like, oh my God, your brain's kind of racing on the other part. So I feed you with a fire hose. Sorry. No,
it's brilliant. So some podcasts you listen on 1.5 or 2. This will knock it down half speed. No, it makes a lot of sense. I'm just thinking about that, playing that back incorrectly, which is an advanced technique. I mean, you said where you got it from. It's funny because with some salespeople, almost like getting them to ask questions can be a bit of a struggle, because it's like, well, that makes me look naive if I've got to ask about things. But no, your job is to help them to think. That's what I'm hearing here. Just to help them to think.
The difference is you're not trying to sell your product. You're trying to help them make progress. Yeah. And the other part is your product does not do all of the they still have to interact with to make the progress. And so we kind of think of once we close the sale, they're done. No, we close the sale, but they still have to make progress. They still have to actually make it to the outcome they want. And buying it is the first step in that process. It's not the progress.
Which I guess is why customer success, which is a reasonably new thing in the world of sales, certainly since we've been around, I guess, is a good thing. I mean, that is recognizing that fact, isn't it?
So so the companies I work with is basically I actually get marketing to think about the where, when, and why as well. And that marketing is tied into their compensation, and bonus is tied into sales and closes. And ultimately the salespeople don't get their full commission at sale. They get their full commission at progress. When the customer meets these metrics, I know that they're actually that they've created value. So you get something for helping to get them started, but you actually make more when they've made the progress they were hoping for.
I love that.
And so this way, here's the thing is one of the things I noticed is we spend more time arguing between marketing, sales, and customer success. Like we literally spend money as opposed to trying to figure out how to align around what the customer is trying to do. And it's 10 times easier to build a team around the progress somebody's trying to make, and to realize, like, I don't want more leads. I want better leads. So like I had built homes, and we used to get 1,000 leads a month. And of the 1,000 leads, we'd close 20 homes. And they kept saying, we're going to get you more leads. I'm like, I don't need more leads. It's too much work to sift through this. And I actually want less leads, but I want more qualified leads. And they're like, yeah, no, we can only generate more leads. I'm like, look, I want 200 leads. So we built this notion of like, tell me why you want to move. What's pushing you? What's causing you to say, today's the day I need to move? What are you hoping for when you get into your new house? What are you most worried about in terms of moving? And what do you love most about your house? And by helping people see that, right, I'm able to actually then, see exactly the progress you're trying to make. But it took my leads from basically 1,000 a month to only having 200 a month. But the 200 people who came in, I closed 80 of them instead of 20 of them.
Right.
Because I knew they were ready. So the notion is I created a speed bump for people who are just kind of out there looking, and I gave them an avenue to keep on the path. But the people who are really serious, and I asked them the tough questions, they were ready to have a conversation with me. And so my sales quadrupled, where everybody else in the market was almost half, because I was focused on helping them make progress. So the other part is I realized is I'm not a builder, I'm a mover. I help people move from their old house to a new house. And what I also realized is that even though I did 1,000 homes in 3 years, I sold 500 used homes because people who couldn't buy my homes could buy somebody else's home that would move into my home. And I had the crews to fix up the houses. So when I reframed my business of I'm not selling homes, I'm selling progress in their life. And moving is part of that progress. I ended up building a moving business. I had a storage business. I had a home improvement business. I had all these different things wrapped around it. So I could literally help people go from one house to another.
Love it. So I'm going to transcribe this
Yes, please.
to pick out all the goodness. I'm actually just going to count how many times you said the word progress. That for me is what's coming through loud and clear, and I'm just going to make sure it does by saying it again.
Yep.
When we start thinking, forget sales, whatever, my job is to help people progress in this part of what they do or what they're doing. And when we start to frame it like that, and that's going to impact how we ask questions, how we don't talk about stuff, or when we talk about stuff, the options we give. Progress. That's the
and so as you talk about your audience earlier, it's like it's B2B.
Yeah.
B2B is challenging. We all know it's challenging and it's complex. But one of the reasons why it's complex is because the VP of IT, who we might be selling to, has their definition of progress, and the VP of sales has a different version of progress, and the salespeople have a different version of progress, and you actually have to wrestle with and help them wrestle with the trade-offs they have to make. So, like if you go to try to sell Salesforce, the reality is the VP of sales and the VP of marketing who are buying Salesforce, they want transparency. They want to see what's going on. They want to have the tentacles. They want to have a more rigid process. The salespeople want to make it easier to sell, which is different. And you start to realize they're actually diametrically opposed. Right? And so part of this is you have to realize that your job is to actually explain the progress for the salespeople to the VPs and explain the VP's progress to the salespeople. So you can actually say, where should we start? Because if you say yes to all of them, you will literally always fail.
So I don't know if it's the right word. Actually, probably in this case it is. I was going to say like a mediator or like a referee.
I would say I always think of like a couples therapist or
there we go. Yeah,
it's in some cases most of them don't realize they both agree like we want to make it easier, right? And so one person says easier, but what they mean by easy are completely different things. And so I have this concept of what I call the layers of language.
Yeah.
And the first layer is this notion of what I call the pablum layer. It's the layer where we talk and people can all agree conceptually what it is, but it actually is saying nothing. I want, this, I need software that's easier and faster and I can onboard better. What does that mean? What we would say is, yep, we can do that. Like, I have no idea what it means. What does easier mean to you? Easier than what? And what's interesting is you say, well, how do I make it easy? Like, I don't know. It's got to be easier. They can't tell you. And then, but if you ask the question of like, well, tell me what's hard about what you do now. It's like, oh God, I got the list here. Boom, 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 boom. And so they can't tell you easy, but they can tell you hard.
Okay. So what's it not?
That's where, no, it's not. The second layer though, is I call it the fantasy nightmare layer. This is where they exaggerate to like, I wanted to do this, or I wanted to do that. And what I'll say there is like, why do you want it to do that? Because I want to get down to the causal layer, which is what is the outcomes they want and what are the struggles that they're trying to overcome. And if I can have the conversation to get past the problem layer and go through the fantasy nightmare layer and get down to the causal layer, now I can tell you when they're going to buy and how they're going to buy. But if they can't actually get to the causal layer, they're not going anywhere.
And yeah, you can see how a salesperson, when they hear easier, faster, onboarding better, I go, yeah, brilliant, happy days, got that written down.
Yeah,
off I
we
go.
do all that.
Proposal,
like I've got 15 clients I've done before. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, boom, boom, boom. There you go. That's what your needs. Here we do. This does it fast. This is better. And the VP didn't. That's not what I meant. And the salesperson goes, that's what I meant. And the finance director goes, not even interested.
Yeah, but this is where you have to be comfortable as a salesperson, going like, look, I think I know what easy means, but I don't know what you mean by easy. Can you give me an example? This is where you have to take the brunt of being stupid. This is the hardest part, that most people don't want to look, salespeople don't want to look stupid, but actually you show how smart you are by asking better questions. God, that's a really good question. Like people will say that, like you'll be in the middle of it and go like, well, we want it easy. Like, what do you mean by easy? And they'll go, God, that's a really good question. Like, I know conceptually what I'm thinking, but like, I don't know. And we're literally king on easy and they don't even know what it means.
I often said that's almost the best thing a salesperson can hear. That's a really good question. I mean, you're doing your job well if you hear that. Or what you did earlier was when you ask a question, they put their head down and go, oh, yeah, you've hit something there. You're helping them. They probably don't feel like it at the time, but you're doing a good job.
This is where you add humor. So when they make the sigh, it's like, oh, I've been there. Yeah. You ready to talk about this yet or not? Like, because it might be, it's like, you need time to process. Like, we don't have to go there. That's fine. And they're like, no. Let me just gather my thought. Like, it's one of those things where you literally hit a nerve that's so hard that they're literally like, I don't even know where to begin with you on this. And I'm not sure I want to share that with you. And so part of it is by you backing off, it makes them lean in more.
Yeah.
Right. And most people, when they do that, they're like, oh, tell me more about that. And it's like, they're like, now they're actually scared to tell you.
Yeah.
So this is where, like, what I try to do. So there's a book called Never Split the Difference. It's written by Chris Voss, and he's a hostage negotiator from the FBI and CIA, and he has all these techniques. So one of the things I was in the middle of writing a book about was basically how to do these interviews and how to do interrogation. And he wrote his is way better than I could ever write. So my thing is, as a salesperson, I give everybody that I work with in sales, that's the number one book I have them read, is we need to teach you how to interrogate better. And interrogation is not what you think it is. It's actually the opposite of what you think it is. Most people think interrogation is going deeper, and you need to go deeper by actually laying back. I'm confused. I don't know what to do. What do you mean by that? All those kinds of things. Basically, it's the opposite. It's almost a paradox. Most people want to lean in and you have to lean back.
Yeah. So sometimes sales really is the opposite of what we think it is, which is why we think about it. And when we start doing it, that's what's going to make us exceptional. That's how we're going to make progress.
Yeah.
Let's get back to that word.
Yeah. So the book itself, Demand Side Sales, which is this yellow book here. It's literally just it's the frameworks and the thinking and the mindset of how to think differently about sales. And though you might be doing Challenger, this is not to replace things like Challenger or Green Sheet or whatever system you might use. But what this book is about is literally, to your point earlier, is like, how do you actually become truly customer centric? Sales has to start from that customer centricity. And it means you have to live in their world and understand what they're struggling with, not live in your product world or your service world.
Love it.
You're the bridge builder.
We will pop a link to that in the show notes.
Yep.
You mentioned just off air earlier, you've got a new podcast.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
right?
So I have
Yeah.
so I mostly do work around new product and innovation, but we do a podcast called The Circuit Breaker. The name of my company is called The Rewired Group because basically I've had 3 close head brain injuries. I can't read and write. And when I went to the doctor, they basically told me, like, I don't know how you're doing what you're doing, but the fact is it looks like you have rewired your brain. I'm like, okay, that's the name of my firm.
I love it.
And then the Circuit Breaker is really about, it's a 30-minute podcast to just do and ask questions like we've done here. It's like literally me and my business partner of 17 years. We've done 3 businesses together. It's one of those things where we just sit around and people will ask us questions or we'll bring up topics and we'll riff for about 30 minutes, but it's like going down the rabbit hole on one topic of how do we get people to say no? Or how do we actually figure out or tell people what it's not, like, what's it mean to go negative kind of thing. And so those are the kinds of things where we'll do that, but it's mostly geared towards both product innovation, entrepreneurship, sales, marketing. It's across the board. It's very fun. I mean, we did pretty well. So season 2 comes out next in the fall. So exciting.
Oh, cool. Oh no, definitely.
And then I have
I've got to catch up that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I have another book that's coming out in September called Learning to Build. So I have a company that helps me frame the progress. So we talk about the job that what are people struggling with in, the area I want to talk about. So like sales. And then we'll literally frame the struggling moment and the outcomes. And then we'll talk about kind of how do we help people make that progress. And that becomes each chapter. And then what we do is I just talk to them about each chapter and then they go write it. So if you pick up the book, it literally will sound like I'm talking because that's how I did it. And so they took transcriptions and then they have writers and editors basically pull it all together. And I did the graphics, but for the most part, everything else is me, writers putting it and making sense in a book form. And so the crazy part is it takes me about 6 months to do a book. I've got 5 books done. I've got another 5 books I'm working on. And it's just one of those things where I can get this stuff out of my head so I can pass it on to other people.
And give yourself more space to think about more stuff.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. Is I didn't anticipate like the space being filled up with new things, and I'm like, so like I'm one of the next books I'm working on is I've been studying people that switch jobs. What causes you say today's the day I'm going to leave this company to go to that company, and when you talk to people, most people think about it as being random. Like, well, I didn't really want to leave, but this came in, and oh my gosh, this happened and that. But when you actually analyze it down to the causal mechanisms, you start to realize there's very big patterns in it. And so we're talking about how to help people understand that the real shift that's happened is that employees hire companies more than companies hire employees.
Yeah.
And so how do we actually help employees or people looking for a job understand the progress they're trying to make and the trade-offs they're willing to make in order to make that progress? And so so we built processes around that. And so I'm in the midst of prototyping all that right now too. So I have a very high energy level, so I don't sleep much. It's a curse and a blessing at the same time.
No, both a lot. And what has been a blessing is that you've made a bit of time to come and speak speak to me or speak to us about this stuff, which is
that's
fascinating.
It's very easy because my metric for my life is very simple. It's the same one that my mentor had, which was, I'm not going to measure my success in my life by the amount of money in my bank account, but I'm going to measure it by the number of people that I've helped. And so if this has just helped one person, think a little differently or a little bit better, and I've spent an hour to do that, that's worth every ounce of that time. Time is, I call the paradox. It's free and priceless at the same time.
Well, I can tell you now straight away it has. Because while I'm making notes on what you're saying, I've got another side of my sheet where I'm writing some little action points of things I need to go and look at. So There you go. Job done.
Perfect.
One job done, which is giving me a whole lot of jobs to be done.
Yep. So the other part is if you get questions or people want to ask questions to you about this or propose them to us, I'm more than happy to have you collect some questions and we do another version where we just answer questions and go deeper.
That would be fantastic. I think there will be.
Let me know.
Yeah. So what we'll do is, I'll put your LinkedIn profile in the show notes as well. Shall I?
That's the best way to get a hold of me.
Certainly, I know straight away some people I'm going to well, suggest, I was going to say make, but suggest listen to this. And these guys will throw up questions immediately, and they'll be good ones. They're engineers.
Well, that's why Marcus is one of those people who has, I feel like he has more energy than I do. And it's one of those things where that's why I think we get along so well, it's just, I think most salespeople have a lot of energy, but it's one of those things where it's just like, he's doing that same thing where he's trying to actually figure out how to help people make progress as opposed to push things onto people.
Yeah.
So that's I think that's the key, is help people identify their struggling moment and the outcome. And then, to be honest, the solution actually magically appears. But if they don't have the struggling moment and they don't have the outcome, they don't know what to do.
Yeah. Guess what? A couple of my jobs to do were.
Yeah. Good.
I think I'm there. I'm very close, but I know I can say it. You talk about language and defining it better, and I can define it better. So, look, it's been a real pleasure. It really has. I know you're on a tight schedule. I'd carry on talking for the next hour, 2 hours, easy.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on, and I hope it was if you enjoyed this podcast, make sure you like and subscribe, because it's one of those things that as a podcaster you would think is really, it's very important to us, and to realize we need feedback to know that you guys are listening and that this is useful to you. So please help by doing at least give us a little feedback.
Spot on. I can't say anymore. There you go. That's our sign off. Cheers, Paul.
Thanks. Be well.
You've been listening to the Sales Today podcast with me, your host, Fred Copestake. If you like what you've heard, why not subscribe so you know when the latest episodes become available? Take a look at my YouTube channel. All episodes are available there, along with extra material all about modern selling. Connect with me on LinkedIn, where I'll share more information around collaborative selling. All part of my mission around having good people doing good things in a good way.